pals, so I'm here today to do a very belated Disability Readathon wrap-up which took place in the month of April. I'm pretty behind with content, but I really didn't want to miss talking about these 4 books because I had such great success with them. I really loved them. I had many more books I wanted to get to, and I've since found many more recommendations from other people's wrap-ups, both on here and on Instagram. So yeah, just wanted to make sure I made some space for these books, and also no matter how late this is, it's not in me to not mention every book I talk about on this channel. I've never once done it in the 8 years I've been in here. I'm not going to start now. So let's crack on. The first one I'm going to talk about, and the only novel I read for Disability Readathon, was A Kind of Spark by Elle McNicoll. I heard really good things about this one and I really enjoyed this. I borrowed it from my library, so I don't have a copy with me, but I'll definitely be picking up my own copy, and also be picking up a copy of her newest release, which only came out a couple of months ago and sounds wonderful as well. So A Kind of Spark focuses on a preteen girl called Addie who is autistic, and we follow her during a term at school when she's being bullied by her new teacher and also some of the other students because she's autistic, and they don't like the way she acts because of that. Obviously awful. And she is learning about witch trials that took place in her small Scottish town and that nobody really speaks about other than this term at school when they learn about it. And she becomes really obsessed with these witch trials and in finding out more about them. So we follow both her sort of investigation into the particular women in her Scottish town who were killed for being witches, and also how she moves through this school term. I love that she found a safe space in the library, and one of her older sisters is also autistic, and it's really wonderful, I think, the way they both had discussions about being autistic, how it was different or the same for both of them, and how they both felt they had to put a mask on for other people in their lives in order to make others feel more comfortable. So I thought this was really wonderful. I am somebody who loves when I read, whether it is YA, middle grade, or written for adults, if it's focusing on children, sort of pre-teen, I really like there to be, one, an emphasis on their time spent at school, because they spend a lot of their time at school, so I think it's important to acknowledge that, but also an emphasis on those like just quiet moments at home where you might just be like sitting at the dinner table and eating like an easy dinner and chatting with your family about your day. I feel that you really get to know a family's life through those moments, and there was lots of moments like that in this book, so I really enjoyed it. This reminded me of Jacqueline Wilson, who I read loads of when I was younger, and the only thing that would have like pushed this over the edge for me giving it 5 stars would have been if it was a bit longer. It's quite a short book, and I would just have loved to spend even more time with these characters and have even more time watching the family, you know, just have dinner after school or chat about homework and all those things. But I really enjoyed it, and will read whatever she brings out in the future. And the next book I read, I was kindly sent an advanced reader's copy of from the publisher, and that is A Still Life by Josie. This is published by Bloomsbury, and like I said, they sent me this advanced reader's copy. I'll put the cover up here because I'll be picking up the final copy. It's very beautiful, and I definitely want to own a copy of this memoir. So this follows Josie George as she talks about her life growing up and now living currently with an undiagnosed chronic condition. Josie has been misdiagnosed with many conditions, a few of which she names are ME, POTS, sensory processing disorder, and FND, which is what I have. And this book is, I really enjoyed it. It's split into 2 sections. So we have the now section, which is following a year in her life as she writes this memoir, and she takes you through her days. So you see exactly what a day is like living for her, and then the then sections are from the moment of her young girlhood when she first started to have symptoms of her illness, and then through the years as those symptoms worsened and like were misdiagnosed with all these things, and as she met the man she had a son with, and then after their breakup, and sort of almost bring you up to present day. And it's very clear in the now sections that she's much closer to accepting her condition, even though it's undiagnosed, and to shaping a life around it that's kind to her and doesn't constantly ask herself to be better and to do more and to, oh, don't feel unwell today because you have to do this and you have to achieve this. Whereas in the then sections you can see that she was very much in that mindset. So I think splitting it between those 2 sections really worked, because I think if it had been told entirely chronologically, obviously you wouldn't have had as much focus on where she is now as a person, which I think is, you know, who she is and what she wants to write about. And I also think that by having half of the book being taken up with the present, we really got to see the minutiae of her day to day, which, I mean, I love like intimate details about people's lives. Like, I absolutely love to like ask people like who I haven't asked before, because I ask everyone, what time do you usually get up in the morning? What time do you usually go to bed? What sort of thing would you eat for breakfast? What sort of thing do you do in the evening? Like, if you work, what do you do when you get home from work? I just find it really fascinating that we have this many hours in a day, and like, what does everyone else choose to do with it? I'm just really nosy. So I always, you know, really like sections that are really intimately focused on an ordinary life, and so I love those sections. And Josie has a really like a generosity of spirit in the way she describes people in both sections, but in particular she spends lots of time at her local community centre. So she uses a like a mobility scooter, and I was going to say a motor scooter, that's not the right term, and she's limited most of the time to not going further than like 100 metres from her house because of her fatigue and chronic pain. And she goes to this local centre to spend time with other people, and she writes there, she reads, and she describes lots of the other people there and the things they're doing, and some of the descriptions were absolutely wonderful. She pays lots of attention to small details. So sometimes she might lie in bed and just watch a bird make a nest outside her window for an hour, and she writes it all beautifully. So I really enjoyed this. I think both sections were excellent. Like, if a tiny little thing didn't work for me completely, this is literally just a personal preference thing in terms of writing style. I felt that some of the sections in the now section, because she writes very beautifully, her nature writing is very beautiful, at times for me it just felt like a tiny bit overwritten, but I mean, it was a really small gripe, and other than that I really enjoyed this book. And again, if she continues to write and bring other books out by their fiction or non-fiction, I'd definitely pick them up. Then I listened on audio to the essay collection Growing Up Disabled in Australia, which was edited and also narrated by Findlay. So this has 40 pieces by 40 chronically ill or disabled Australians, and what I love about this series, so this is the second one I've read, the first one I read was Growing Up Aboriginal in Australia, and I read that one last year, is that I think the editors make a really conscious effort to make sure the collection is intersectional. So as well as spanning different disabled and chronically ill voices, this collection spans different races, genders, ages, religion, sexualities, just everything you could think of. It's amazing in terms of its intersectionality, which is something I really appreciated. So what I really enjoyed about this essay collection in particular is that as well as seeing each individual's personal story, of course, in their essay, you also see the history of disability rights in Australia, and also quite a lot of essays touched on the social versus medical model of disability, which is something I found fascinating to hear people talk about, and really made me, and I'm sure lots of other readers, question the way in which society and the communities we as individuals move through are created for like able-bodied, young, fit, like a very specific type of people who we assume are the majority, and how detrimental it is to everyone to not consider all the different types of bodies that might be using these spaces. So I thought that was excellently described throughout all the essays, and this is just a brilliant collection. It has every different emotion you could think. Some of these are really funny, tender, some of them are angry, loads of them are obviously very informative. I really enjoyed it. I thought Findlay narrated it excellently. So in Growing Up Aboriginal Australia, which I also listened to on audio, there was quite a few different audio narrators, whereas Carly does the whole collection herself. But I thought she was really good at using, you know, different, she evoked all the individual people's voices really well, I felt. So I definitely want to pick up a physical copy of this, because what I struggle with when I listen to this sort of thing on audio, and it's, you know, from lots of different contributors, is pinpointing the ones I really enjoyed and like highlighting sections, and then going to find other things written by those authors, because it's just not as easily accessible as it would be if you had a physical copy. So I'm definitely going to be picking up a physical copy of this one, and I'll be reading the rest of the Growing Up in Australia series because I think they're great. And then the last one, which I also listened to on audio and completely adored, this is like easily one of my favourite books so far this year, and I would happily just re-listen to this one like right now, because I got so much out of it in every regard, in every type of emotion, and I just loved it. And that is Sitting Pretty, The View from My Ordinary Resilient Disabled Body by Rebecca Taussig. So I heard Jen talk about this book, and I thought it sounded wonderful, and then I've heard other people pick it up following Jen's recommendation, and I'm so glad I did as well, because it is fabulous. So this is Rebecca's memoir as well, and something I really enjoy in memoirs. I enjoy like memoirs in all different formats, but something I've noticed I particularly enjoy is when somebody groups their memoirs by themes rather than in chronological order, and that's what Rebecca does in this memoir. So each chapter almost feels like an essay, and it's definitely a personal essay, but in each chapter she focuses on a different element of what it is like for her moving through life in a wheelchair, and how she interacts with the world and how the world interacts with her. So for example, there is a chapter that talks about what it was like for her as a very young child, how she was treated by her family and also by others around her, but then there might be chapters on, so she is a teacher. There's a devastating chapter about her having the opportunity to, she's an English teacher, and I don't really understand this like school system. It's something I need to look into more. She can basically write her own course for that term, and so she chooses to study disability and the way that's presented through texts, and so they study the history of disability through like English literature. Like a few of my friends are teachers and they just get told what they have to teach, but I'm aware there's like a different type of school system where that isn't the case. But anyway, and there's like one student she has who just won't budge in any of his beliefs, which are like horrendous, and I couldn't think of a word that was bad enough to describe how awful his beliefs are. And he comes to her office one day and just is like, I just don't see the point in me doing this course, like it doesn't apply to me like at all. And her response was brilliant, because in one mind she was like, I find it awful that because something doesn't apply to you, you don't care. The complete lack of empathy is concerning, but also that you're so sure that it will never apply to you. She had a really good point that anyone who lives to a certain age inevitably becomes disabled, and since like lockdown's been shifting, we've been able to see Johnny's grandparents a little bit more, who are very elderly, and you know, they're of an age where they trip and fall all the time, and it's, you know, really scary. And so I completely saw her point of view. If we all live to a certain age, we will all inevitably live with a different body that isn't able to do some of the things it could do. So I thought that was an excellent chapter. There's a chapter all about the representation of disability and chronic illnesses in media, which I loved. I find that sort of thing fascinating. As somebody who consumes a lot of media in every format, sometimes I just feel like disengaging with it entirely, because in so many ways it perpetuates like awful stereotypes and reinforces these unconscious biases people hold. I'm also aware that the media with books like this does wonderful things to combat that. Just loved it. There's a chapter all about her trying to find a house that she can access as an adult woman in a wheelchair, and I, when growing up, lived in like, I don't even know, like I've lived in over 20 homes, and when she was describing all these houses she went to view and how they were all inaccessible, not even just that she couldn't get in the front door, but once she was in, like door frames weren't wide enough for her wheelchair to get through, countertops were too high for her to be able to access, the bathroom wasn't accessible for her. And it made me realise how crazily inaccessible not only the homes that I've lived in, but every home I've ever been in must be for somebody in a wheelchair. I genuinely tried to think of a single home I'd been in that could be accessible to someone in a wheelchair, and I couldn't. And it's crazy, like even, you know, a lot of new build estates that you see popping up all the time, none of those homes are accessible. And just something as simple as that, finding somewhere to live, to be so fucking hard. it's just devastating that we haven't adapted as a community. And a perfect example she uses is, you know, the dropped curbs we have here in the UK, and I'm sure people have in other countries. And I think she says that they were brought in specifically for people in wheelchairs, but obviously lots of other people benefit. Parents with prams, elderly people who found the step difficult, anybody using a walking stick, like loads of people benefited, but it wasn't done for loads of people, it was done for a specific group of people. But inevitably there will be other people that benefit. And yeah, and I loved how she was just challenging society and the government to think more creatively, to not be so just stuck in their ways that they can't even consider that there's this wonderful diverse group of people out there who could come up with such like amazing ways for people to move through spaces that would help everybody, but they just stick to the same tired old practices. So I absolutely love this memoir. She's really funny. She's just a beautiful writer. I think she could write about anything, and I'd just want to listen to her because she's just I just thought she was really funny, really smart, really eloquent, and I don't know how anybody could read or listen to this and not come away and just agree with every point she's made. So yeah, I loved it. So like I said, there was quite a few more books I wanted to get to which I didn't manage to, which I'll just continue to get to throughout the rest of the year. But do let me know if you've read any of these. I highly recommend all of them. I thought they were all fantastic. So let me know what you read, if you participated in the Disability Readathon or what you're continuing to read. I'd love more recommendations down below. In particular, something I found when looking for books by chronically ill or disabled people, I found that an awful lot of those books that are published are by white people, and I have found some that aren't, but not many compared to, I mean, obviously other than the Growing Up Disabled in Australia, which was from 40 different voices, all of these books were by white people, and I loved them all, but obviously I'd like to hear a diverse array of voices, and also from all different countries in the world. So yeah, please feel free, like these are all limited to the US, the UK and Australia, so I'd also like to read voices from other countries. So yeah, I'd love recommendations down below, both for myself and like other people looking in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!